Welcome to the PR Maven podcast, a podcast all about growing your network and building your brand through traditional and digital networking techniques. I'm Nancy Marshall, the PR Maven and CEO of Marshall Communications. I've been strengthening brands through PR for over 35 years, and now I'm celebrating the success of executives, influencers, business owners, and entrepreneurs from all around the world, all of whom have cultivated their brands and broadened their networks through traditional and digital networking methods. Each week, I interview one of these interesting and influential individuals and provide an opportunity for you, the PR Maven Nation, to gain insights from their strategies and stories. So stay tuned for this week's episode, and thanks for listening. Welcome to the PR Maven podcast, and this is episode number 143. And I'm so excited today to have as my guest Kate Vickery, who's president and CEO of Make-A-Wish Maine. Kate, welcome to the PR Maven podcast.
Hi, Nancy. Thanks so much for having me.
So fun to have you here on StreamYard.
No, this is exciting. I wasn't expecting video, so it's really extra fun.
Yeah, well, we've just added this bit of video technology, and I'm enjoying it too.
Great.
So Kate Vickery is president and CEO of Make-A-Wish Maine, responsible for the organization's achievement of its vision, mission, and financial objectives. Kate started with the Maine chapter in 2005 as volunteer director, and then spent the majority of her tenure as the chapter's program director, overseeing and executing all of the organization's wish granting operations for 10 years. She became president and CEO in 2017 and focuses on working together with the dedicated board of directors to increase the chapter's annual revenue, oversees day-to-day operation, and partners with the Make-A-Wish Maine team to deliver life-changing wishes to children throughout our great state. So, Kate, how has Make-A-Wish navigated this COVID-19 pandemic?
Oh gosh, yes, it's been a challenge like it has for everybody. You know, I'm sure it's the same as everyone has sort of had to pivot and make quick decisions and change their business strategy and all of that. For us in particular, I think, it impacted the organization as a whole on both sides of the organization. Typically, in a normal year, about 70% of our wishes involve some kind of travel or large group gathering. Obviously, Disney World, which everybody is, familiar with Make-A-Wish. We have a great partnership with Disney, and it's one of our more popular wishes. So, traveling to those types of places and being in large crowds became a safety hazard for our kids, and our kids especially, since most of them are immunocompromised. So we had to quickly pivot on that. And then on the flip side is our revenue that supports those wishes. Typically 50% of that in a year is coming from events. And so again, gatherings that at the outbreak of the pandemic, when everything was shut down, weren't possible. And so we had to learn, like everybody else, how to do business differently. We spent a lot of time working with our volunteers and shifting them to a virtual environment where they were meeting with their wish kids like this and virtual or on Zoom and doing wish discovery that way. We had to work with our families to discuss the types of wishes that we could continue to grant that would be safe for their kids and sort of work through that process. And then we certainly had to work on the events and revenue side of things to shift and figure out what we could still do safely for our constituents and still host, or if not, switched it to virtual, and then also come up with different ideas for different kinds of revenue streams so that we could still support the mission. But it's been an interesting year, as it has for everybody, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, I'd say that you have made the transition very smoothly, at least from the outside perspective.
Yeah, we've been really fortunate to continue to grant wishes, which I think is the most important thing. That's what we're here for, right? That's our mission. And it's actually, we've learned a lot. Like, I think that's the other thing, that it's not without its challenges, but we certainly have learned quite a lot. And at the heart of everything we do is relationships, and it's relationships with our kids, our volunteers, our donors. And so as long as we can continue to foster those, then we were able to continue to do our day-to-day work. And our teams worked very hard, and our families have been very patient, and we have dozens of kids who are still waiting for that day when it is safe for them to travel again. But we have granted dozens of wishes throughout the last year as well that we were able to do safely, and they've been just as meaningful and impactful for our kids. So,
Yeah, I
good
think
story.
in many ways, kids are more resilient than adults.
That is something we say around here often. Yeah, I think, even through this year, but especially, with the population of kids that we serve and what they're facing with their illnesses, they definitely are more resilient for sure.
Yeah. So, what do you think is the biggest misconception about Make-A-Wish and the delivery of its mission?
Oh, such a good question. Thank you for asking that one. Yeah, I think, we're very fortunate as a nonprofit that there's a high level of familiarity with Make-A-Wish and an association with what we do in terms of granting wishes to kids. But I think there's still plenty of misconceptions out there in terms of who we serve and how we do that at Make-A-Wish. I think many people believe that we are only granting the dying wish of a child and are only working with kids who have a terminal diagnosis. And that is not the case. We work with kids who have life-threatening or critical illnesses. And many of our kids go on to defeat their illness and have a positive outcome. And we like to think that the wish is part of that process as well. So I think that, we often talk about how a wish can create hope for these kids, and that's really where our focus is the hope part of that. We're in the business of hope, as we like to say too. And so I think that when you sort of shift the mindset there in terms of having thought that maybe it was a last chance to maybe it's absolutely not that, maybe it's something that really encourages and sort of launches the future and the hope and thinking about what's ahead for these kids when they start down the wish journey. And then I think there's also, misconceptions about how we execute wishes. I think sometimes people think that it's, that all of the airfare is donated and that we don't, that it's free, or a celebrity who is granting a wish is taking care of the entire thing. And that's not the case either. I mean, we're constantly fundraising so that we can support all of these wishes to make sure that they come true. And we're grateful, and we do benefit from some really strong partnerships within the celebrity world, as well as, our partners in the airline business and in the hospitality industry. But we're fundraising, and most oftentimes we're purchasing airline tickets and booking hotel rooms and rental cars and all of that. It all goes into the part of the expense of the wish. And so I think that's something else that maybe people aren't aware of, as well as the fact that it's happening right here in Maine. I think that, again, it's a well-known national brand, but oftentimes that can be, overlooked in terms of that we're granting wishes right here in your backyard, in your own communities, to kids of your coworkers or, grandkids of folks that you're friends with and things like that. And so we're constantly trying to make sure that people here understand that the work that we're doing here in Maine, the money that we're raising here in Maine, is benefiting our Maine kids and our Maine communities.
Well, it's a very complex business that you're running too. When you think about it, it's almost like you're running a travel agency as well as a nonprofit.
Yeah, I think that was one of the most fun things when I was in my previous role here as program director, and I was actually doing the wish coordination. Was, you could spend a day working on several different wishes, and that would take you from everywhere from booking a travel wish, and that could be a Disney World wish, that could be a San Diego wish, that could be a wish to go to London or Australia. And then you'd shift to granting a wish for a puppy, and then you'd shift to granting a wish for a backyard makeover, or then you shift to something else. And so I learned a great deal about all kinds of things I would never know about without it.
Yeah. Do you create a menu of wishes, or is it kind of like the sky's the limit and whatever kids can think up?
Yeah, we don't have a menu. We're really focused on the wish discovery process with the kids and letting that take as much time as it needs to. We want to make sure that we like to think of it as a journey that we take the kids on, not just focusing on the actual specific wish itself. So the start of that journey is just sparking their imagination and of anything that you could, wish for, to have, or to meet somebody, or to go someplace, or any of those things. What would it be? And then sort of work with them through that to what's going to be most meaningful and most impactful for them, and what's really coming from their heart and what it is that they want. Because at the end of the day, what we're looking for is that impact for each kid. And so it's always fun to see what kids come up with, and certainly varies depending on the age range. And we have some things that we can and can't do. We certainly have parameters that the goal is for us to grant everyone's wish. So we have to have some parameters in place to allow us to do that. But the more creative, the better. We love it.
Yeah. What if they want to meet somebody that you have absolutely no connection with? How do you make that connection?
So we benefit from our partners at the national office at Make-A-Wish America a great deal when it comes to celebrity-based wishes. They have a team out there that manages many, many celebrity relationships. And typically we're working with them to reach out and either work with someone they already have a relationship established with, or form a new one. And that's been so fun to watch over the years. Nowadays it's kids are wanting to meet YouTubers, gamers on YouTube. And when I first started here, it was Miley Cyrus. And
Right.
So it's kind of fun to see how that's shifted over the years. But those can be really special experiences for our kids.
Yeah, I can imagine even like TikTok stars, probably.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So, it's like never a dull moment. We always say that, and always a learning experience. Yeah. These kids teach us a great deal.
Right. And how things have changed.
Yeah.
What are some of the most memorable wishes that you've granted in Maine?
Oh gosh. So I think every wish that we grant is memorable, and they're all unique in their own way because they each come from an individual child and their process of going through the wish discovery and where they land and all of that. And I think for me personally, it's more so the ones I remember because of the impact that the wish has had on the child and the actual wish itself. And I can think of several examples in terms of where you wouldn't have thought that the impact or the outcome for the kiddo would have been what it was, but that the wish was literally life-changing for them. We granted a wish, probably 10 years ago now, for a little boy who was very shy. And I think that his parents thought that his wish was going to go to Disney. And after he went through the process with his volunteers, they got back together and he shared that he wanted to go to Egypt and he wanted to go on an archaeological dig.
Oh my God.
A big surprise to mom and dad. And they had to shift from Orlando to
Cairo
and overseas and all of that. And so, we learned that, through getting to know the child, that was absolutely an appropriate wish based on their interests and all of that. And so while they were on their wish trip, he was exposed to the artisan work that was happening over there. And he did go on a dig and he was learning about, some of the artifacts that they came up with. He saw potters doing pottery and he came back home and he started doing pottery at a very young age. And so he continued to do that all through his middle school and high school career. And he has now opened an art studio in Winslow and is selling his pottery, and that's his career now. So you just never know where it's going to take you. We've granted wishes for kids that are, we call them give back wishes, or very altruistic in nature. And those are always pretty powerful. We worked with a high school kiddo who was a sophomore, and actually because he played football, that's how they discovered a tumor, which ended up being malignant cancer. And his wish was for us to put bleachers and lights on his high school football field so that they could have Friday night lights games, or games on Friday nights under the lights, And that was an amazing experience for everybody involved. It was amazing for us to kind of navigate how we could help make that happen. It was such a huge project that it was a little out of the scope of what we could accomplish within a wish itself. But what we were able to do is partner with the community, and they really took it and ran from there. And he was able to flip the switch to turn the lights on for the first time. And, unfortunately, he ended up passing away, but his legacy lives on because of that field and because of what the community did in partnership with him. And kids are playing on that field today.
What community
still. So
is that in?
that was at Maranacook High
wow.
School. Yeah, it was really special. And really kudos to all of the community members because they're really the ones that made it happen. But it was a privilege to be a part of it. So. Well, I could talk to you all day about wish journals, Nancy.
Yeah, that's a really powerful story.
Yeah.
Maranacook's in Manchester, of course, and right outside of Augusta.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So how has public relations helped spread the word about Make-A-Wish?
Oh, gosh, it's huge for us. I think, just as we're just having the conversation, I think storytelling is at the heart of what we do, and it's what strengthens our brand and our mission. And so the more we can tell stories, the more we can share those stories of not just the wish, but the impact and who it engages. Then I think the more people we are then able to bring into the Make-A-Wish family, if you will, and have them understand, the power of our mission. So we think, we'll tell stories any chance we get. And I think nowadays it's exciting because there's so many different ways for us to do that. Certainly social media has been a great benefit to us and exposed, just expanded our network in so many different ways. And there's a nice tie in between social media and digital fundraising these days, digital communications, and making it as easy as possible for people to contribute to the mission, but also to just continue to share the stories. And it can, as social media goes, just continue to reach so many more people. So I think, the visual and the content that we have at Make-A-Wish because of the amazing stories that go along with all these kids is something that from a PR perspective is a great benefit to us to be able to continue to do our work.
And that's kind of how we're here today. You had reached out to me about a month ago, to see how we might be able to collaborate. And we had a meeting, and that resulted in me asking you to join me on the podcast.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I think, again, so I heard a phrase recently that I just loved in terms of nonprofit management, but it is about creating your army of the engaged. And, that is absolutely what we're trying to do, is just to continue to bring more people into the mission in whatever way possible. Whether it's more people in the medical community who know what we're doing here at Make-A-Wish, who know what our eligibility requirements are and can help us make sure that we find every child in Maine that's eligible to receive a wish, or whether it's somebody who wants to volunteer and isn't sure how to do it, or somebody who has the capacity to give and make a significant impact in that manner, or a company who has in kind. If you're a construction company or if you're making play sets these days, we would love to talk to you because that is where we're at with wishes right now. So there's just so many ways. And I think it'd be hard to find somebody who has been touched by Make-A-Wish or been a part of a wish who wouldn't tell you how amazing and powerful that experience is.
Yeah, well, that's what it takes to have a strong brand, is a brand community and raving fans and ambassadors and people that are going to kind of help you live your mission and spread the word about it. So
yes, absolutely.
You've definitely got that, and as being part of a national organization as well as a state organization. So
yeah, we're very lucky. I mean, I think that is not something that we take for granted at Make-A-Wish. I think we're very proud. We're there was a recent study done with Morning Consult, and Make-A-Wish is the number 2 most loved nonprofit based on that survey. And that's something that we are proud of, but also something that we have great respect for how we got there. And within that, we do what we can to protect the brand and take very seriously that means that there's a level of trust with the general public in terms of supporting us and where their investment is going, and that we're stewarding their support in the right way, and that we're delivering our mission appropriately to our kids. So it's something that we here at our chapter in Maine I'm a little bit of a fierce protector of that brand, but it's we find great benefit from it, and we know that ultimately that benefits our kids, which is the most important thing.
Well, I love that concept of brand stewardship. I'm glad that you used that word, because I think many definitions of brand is that it really isn't you don't own the brand. It really resides in the hearts and the minds of the people in your brand community. And yeah, you are stewarding and guiding that brand, but you don't own the brand.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's our responsibility to steward it in that way, because of how it impacts our day to day and our ability to deliver our mission. So I think, when we think of the reputation and the social impact and influence, quality of brand, all of that comes together. And again, it's our responsibility to continue to protect that so that the sustainability of the organization allows us to reach as many kids as possible.
Yeah, nice. Well, we're going to continue our conversation in just a moment, but I want to remind you about my latest book, which is called Grow Your Audience, Grow Your Brand, and it's available on. Actually, you can get your free copy just by going to prmaven.com/giveaway and download it there. And we'll be back in just a moment with more from Kate Vickery.
Do you want to grow your client or customer base? Perhaps increase brand awareness? Maybe tell your unique story more effectively? Of course you do. But you may be worried that you don't have enough expertise to make that happen. Well, no worries, PR Maven Nation. Let the PR Maven herself, Nancy Marshall, show you how easy it is to get your message across effectively using a powerful yet simple tool, a message map. Nancy's training is often called informative and constructive, well-designed and impactful, with a perfect blend of theory and real-life experience. You will leverage Nancy's expertise to create your own message map when you register for this comprehensive online video training course, which is broken down into 4 easy-to-understand modules. Normally, this course is priced at $147, but for listeners of the PR Maven podcast, that's you, PR Maven Nation, it's only $29 when you enter the code word podcast during enrollment. It even includes a workbook and bonus content to guide you through the process. So go to prmaven.com and click on the Message Map Mastery course to enroll today. Remember, enter the word podcast during enrollment for a special discounted price of $29.
Welcome back to the PR Maven podcast. And today we're talking with Kate Vickery, who's from Make-A-Wish Maine. And we just wanted to remind you that the podcast is now available on Facebook and YouTube now that we've gone to this StreamYard edition. We had previously been doing Audible only, but I'm kind of excited about doing video as well.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Even
We're
though
going to share.
we were joking before, we have to pay a little more attention. All that stuff.
Got to do the hair, have to get ready, not like being on radio.
Right, exactly. So, Kate, what is the frequency of wishes granted here in Maine?
Yeah, so on an average in a regular year, we have to always preface that within the last, what we've all been through. But in a normal year, we're typically granting anywhere between 70 and 80 wishes a year to kids here in Maine. So that works out on average to be around 1 every 5 days. And, I'm pleased and I'm just so proud of our team and our families and their ability to work through this past year with us, because we're going to end our fiscal year this year fairly close to that same frequency. So just slightly underneath that. And that is without being able to grant any travel or large group gathering wishes. So, the staff here has been working really hard to make sure that we continue to deliver our mission. We've been extremely grateful for the wonderful support that we've received from our communities to be able to continue to do it throughout this year and again, to work with our families. And a part of our mission is to make sure that we're delivering wishes to these kids at the most important time, when it's going to create that lift and give them that distraction and help them, through what no child should ever have to go through in terms of battling a critical illness. And so the timing of a wish is really important. And we know that from, having witnessed it so many times and also working with our partners in the medical community. So it wasn't like we could just put everything on hold and wait for, this to end. And I think especially with the population of kids that we serve who were even more isolated. Isolation that we've all felt in this past year isn't entirely new for our families because of how these kids have to manage, their illnesses. And so I think that it made it even worse for some of the kids that we work with. And so being able to come into that environment and say to them, let's focus on something positive, and why don't you, think a little bit about what you might want to do and you can do. And if that's an online shopping spree, you can spend the next 2 weeks picking out anything that you want. And if that's, if you're going to be in the hospital doing that, you can do it from anywhere that you want. So I think, there's just been ways that we've been able to connect these kids through this time that have been especially important as well. And so we're pretty proud of where we're going to end up, and look forward to getting back to normal and increasing that number and frequency of wishes delivered after we get through this time.
Yeah, it must feel really good to be able to make that happen for them.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm very lucky to do this work, and as I know our team feels that way as well. But we also, we're sort of behind the scenes, and we rely very heavily on a wonderful army of the engaged, as I referenced, and that includes, dedicated volunteers that are statewide. And there's only 7 of us here on staff, and we work with kids that are statewide. So we would never be able to do that without volunteers. We have over 200 volunteers statewide, and most of them are helping us work directly with the kids to discover their wish and then deliver it. And so the pandemic has given us an opportunity also to deliver wishes locally that we wouldn't normally do, because mostly when we are traveling, kids, they're experiencing their wish out of state or in a different location, right? So with the inability to do that, the majority of the wishes that we've granted in recent months and throughout the last year have happened right here. And so while we're still managing the sort of the health and safety and exposure aspects of that, so it limits the number of people that can be involved, we have been able to engage more partners within our local communities in the wish itself than we normally would too, which has been another silver lining for us.
Yeah. So where have you gotten stories about Make-A-Wish Maine? Like what TV and radio and newspaper and magazine coverage have you gotten?
So locally, I'd say we partner with all of our local outlets. We have a standing relationship right now with WGME 13 that they do a Wish Wednesday feature for us every month, the last Wednesday of the month, and they've been great partners. They helped us launch our first ever telethon this year in February. That's another example of the pivot that we had to make in terms of revenue. So if we weren't able to host one of our largest fundraising events of the year twice now because of the pandemic. And so launching a telethon where we could still tell our story and engage new donors and share our mission with others ended up working really well. And our folks over at WGME 13 were great partners with us and executing that as well as our corporate partners. And, beyond that, I think it's just continuing. I think our stories are so compelling because they are about our kids and come from the heart of our kids, but also because of the ripple effect and the people in our communities that are engaged by the wishes. And nowadays, people are just looking for, there's a lot of noise out there, and unfortunately, most of it's negative. So the positive aspect of what we're fortunate enough to do, I think, is really resonating with folks nowadays, especially. And so we'll tell our story wherever we can.
Yeah. Well, it's positive, but it's also somewhat bittersweet, isn't it?
It can be, certainly. Yeah, there's definitely the reality of it in terms of the illnesses that these kids are facing and all of that. But we really like to focus on the uplifting aspect of a wish and the power that it has for these kids, and try and be a part of, I think it's being part of the healing process as much as we can for these kids. And that
and their
happens
families.
often. And their families, absolutely. Yeah. I've worked with families. I remember one a kiddo in particular. I think, for teenagers, being a teenager is hard enough these days, but to put on top of that everything that comes into play for these kids when they have a critical illness that they're battling and a diagnosis that, one day everything is just the angst of being a teenager, and the next day you have a diagnosis of a critical illness and everything is just turned upside down. And so it can be especially difficult for those kids because they understand it more. And so oftentimes that can result in withdrawal, and it's very difficult to navigate. So we worked with a kiddo who had sort of shut down in terms of desire to participate in therapies and really kind of just, fight through the illness. And once we said, well, let's talk about what your wish might be. And he chose to travel to Hawaii and wanted to go ziplining and do a couple other things. And we're able to say to him, we can't wait to make this happen for you. He then shifted his focus to being strong enough to fully enjoy his experience when he was on his wish and re-engaged in occupational therapy, physical therapy. So those are the sort of trickle down effects that a wish can have. And when I love to talk about Make-A-Wish, but when I love to talk about the power of a wish, it goes so much beyond, like I said, the actual wish itself and all of those, sort of residual impacts that it can have. For not only for the kids, but for their families, their siblings, and the larger communities that support them.
Yeah, well, that's the true definition of hope, what you just talked about. I mean, he was hopeful for his trip, and that energized him to focus on his healing. That was great.
Yeah. And sometimes you have to create that, right? Like that's, we talk about that as well as creating hope, and you don't have to just wait for it to appear. You can create that for yourself. So,
right.
And that goes for anybody.
Yeah. Tell me about the brand partnerships that you're building to get companies and corporations involved with the organization.
Yeah, so we're fortunate to live in Maine, which is a wonderful community of all kinds of supportive, companies and individuals as well. But I think, back to sort of the brand power that we are aware of, where we want to partner and align with companies who are looking to create meaningful philanthropic efforts for their employees to be a part of, or for their brand and wherever they're really focusing their efforts to align with Make-A-Wish. And so I think, when it comes to corporate responsibility and being, good community citizens and from a corporate perspective, where we can come into that is to not only engage their employees, but help share the stories of Make-A-Wish with their employees and with their consumers, their customers. I think that there's another statistic that is 89% of consumers are more likely to switch brands to a company that they know is associated with a good cause, or who is a good, corporate responsible, a responsible corporation. So I think, having that conversation and being very upfront of it with our corporate partners is important, but then also figuring out what it is that they want to accomplish that fits with what we're trying to accomplish. And so I think, we have great partnership with VIP Tires and Service, and they have been supporting Make-A-Wish for years. And they do a very simple in nature campaign. They sell paper stars during the holiday seasons, during November and December, in all their locations. And they're engaging their customers, they're engaging their employees. They're super competitive, and I love it. And because they're battling from location to location to see who can sell more stars. And then their leadership has really gotten behind it and supports it, and they know that. So the leadership of VIP then matches the amount that they've sold to double the impact for what they're contributing to Make-A-Wish. And so that incentivizes the employee engagement even more at that level. And so they have stores in multiple locations. So they're impacting Wish kids in Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts. And it's been hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years that they've contributed to Make-A-Wish. And so it's a great partnership. And I think a really good example of how full circle it can be in terms of supporting our mission and partnering with our brand.
Yeah, and I can see how that makes everybody feel better over the holidays too.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And we've been able to share with them sort of through their structure. We've been able to share wish stories with them so their employees are fully aware of where the support is going. And then they're sharing those stories with the customers that they're talking to at the checkout and explaining why they support Make-A-Wish and telling about kiddos that they've met. And we've been able to engage them with some of our families. And so it's a really neat partnership. And I think, again, sometimes there's people look at Make-A-Wish as just supporting one child, and that's not entirely true either. While we are granting a wish to a child, again, it goes to the family, it goes to their community, and then it goes to the community of supporters who are making the wish come true. So the ripple effect is much larger. And that's the community of folks that corporate partners are supporting, as well as our individual donors at the same time.
Yeah, well, it's all very feel good. I mean, it kind of really touches your heartstrings. I feel it today.
It's such a simple mission, and I think it started at the organization itself was founded by a group of folks out in Arizona who wanted to help a little boy who had leukemia experience being a police officer for a day. That's all he wanted. And so his mother was friends with some folks in law enforcement, and they created this experience for him and gave him a day he would never forget. And unfortunately, he ended up passing away. Back then, a diagnosis of leukemia was much different than it is today. And they got together after that and said, there has to be more kids out there that we can do this for. And it's not only how impactful it was for Chris, was the name of the little boy at that time, but for all of them as well, and everybody else that they engaged in it. And they literally sat around a kitchen table and talked about how to do this, and then got their first donation. I think it was $42.37 from somebody who worked in the grocery store locally. And it's now become, the most well-known wish granting organization in the world, because we do have international affiliates in addition to the 59 chapters here in Maine. I mean, here in the United States. Yeah.
That's awesome. So how can people get involved with the Make-A-Wish mission, and why would they want to support it? I think you've made a good case for why they would want to support it, but how can they get involved?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many ways you can get involved. I think it's, volunteer. We're always looking for volunteers, whether that is volunteer leadership. We have a wonderfully dedicated board of directors, and we're always looking for community leaders and partners who want to serve at that level and help us from a more strategic and governing sense with the organization. And then we have a Young Leaders Council where we're engaging more young professionals in the mission. And so that's a really neat opportunity that we've just established in the last couple of years. And then we have a need for volunteers on a regular day-to-day basis, whether those are wish granters or event volunteers who are helping us with our fundraising. So you can find out information about that on our website, which is wish.org/Maine. And, you can also go there to find out more about the events that we're hosting. We have some really fun stuff coming up. We've been fortunate to have our Trailblaze Challenge. We were able to host that during COVID because it's all outside. It's an endurance hike, 23.4 miles in one day. Up in Carrabassett Valley area that you know well.
Yeah.
It's on the Maine Hut Trail, but it's we launched it 2 years ago. This will be our third year, and I was fortunate enough to participate the first year, and it was awesome. It was a life-changing event, but it's not only do you, the personal challenge and accomplishment of it, but you meet great people along the way, and you form great relationships with our group of hikers. And it's rooted in mimicking and aligning with the journey that our Wish kids take, and the resilience and strength and all of that they have to muster up and face on a daily basis. And so that's what our hikers undertake too. So we're recruiting for that right now if anyone's interested in hiking, and then we'll start training hikes for that in June, and the event itself takes place in September. And then we'll have, hopefully, fingers crossed, our Wish Night event this fall, depending on how things go. And so all the information about events is on our website as well. Certainly following our social media is a great way to stay in touch with what we're doing. That's where we're sharing our wishes on a regular basis. So if you need a daily dose of inspiration via the power of a wish, you can usually find that on Facebook, on our Facebook or Twitter and Instagram as well. So I think that's a great way to just kind of, get to know Make-A-Wish a little bit if you don't right now, get to know what we're doing here in Maine, how we're impacting our kids and our communities, and then figure out how you want to get involved. And even if it's just supporting the mission and helping us make sure that we have the funds to continue to grant wishes, you can do that through our website as well.
Well, I didn't know about your hut to hut hike, so I'm intrigued with that. Yeah, because I used to work with the Maine huts and trails, so I know that whole, and I've cross-country skied and snowshoed and walked.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yep. So we start just above Flagstaff, and then it ends at the Sugarloaf Outdoor Center. So It weaves all the way down and through there, and it's beautiful. We're doing, we do it in September this year. It'll be on September 11th. The hike weekend is the 10th through the 12th, and Sugarloaf is our base for it. So we host the hikers. That we do have a fundraising minimum that everyone who participates has to raise. So that's the other part of the challenge for our hikers. And again, they're learning about Make-A-Wish and the mission along the way, and they will hear stories and meet people who are impacted and associated with Make-A-Wish, and then everything culminates in that hike weekend. So it's really fun, and it's limited.
Fun.
Yeah, we limit it to a certain number of participants so that we can make sure that they're supported as much as we can throughout the both the training process and then that they're supported on hike weekend.
Yeah, I bet you need to train, or else you get some pretty bad blisters.
That's exactly right. Yes. Yeah.
So, Kate, is there a book, an app, or a website that you have found helpful in your personal or professional life, and why?
Oh gosh, that's a good one. I think so. In this last year, I like nonfiction. I like to read biographies and
Me too.
yeah, I do. I love to learn from other people and their experiences and just hear about their experiences. So I gravitate towards that anyways in terms of books and learning. But I was introduced to Joan Gary, who's a nonprofit consultant and professional in this last year, especially in terms of trying to navigate COVID and the impact and leading a nonprofit through change. And she likes to say that nonprofits are messy.
Yeah.
That's her tagline, which is true under normal circumstances. But, when something like this happens and the rules sort of no longer apply, just sort of figuring out how to lead your team through that is a bit challenging. And it's been great. So she's got a blog and a podcast, and then her book, it's called The Guide to Nonprofit Leadership, has been great. That's where I got the Army of the Engaged phrase from.
Nice. I like that.
She should trademark that because I'm going to steal it. But
Yeah.
I think that's been really helpful in terms of just looking at how we reemerge from COVID and the impact, and how we have a backlog of kids now because of the inability to travel, and that will impact how we move forward and make sure that we continue to deliver the quality of an experience that our donors are expecting and supporting. And again, it's about sustainability for me as well. I think that every nonprofit leader is focused on, what kind of strategies need to be put in place to sustain the ability to deliver your mission. So she's been a good source of inspiration and advice.
So that's Joan, and how do you spell her last name?
Joan Gary. It's Garry.
All right, that's great. I'll have to look into that.
Yeah.
She's that recommendation.
She's entertaining and engaging, and she has quite a bit of nonprofit experience on all sides. And so,
so is it your wish to meet her?
Actually, she presented at one of our it was a virtual conference this year for Make-A-Wish America, but. No, they always ask that, we ask our staff, I think it's listed on our website in our bios, but my wish would be to attend the Olympics.
Well, there.
Yes.
I think we should make that come true.
What about you? Do you know
Oh,
what your
gosh. Well, I already went to New Zealand years ago, and my son Craig was doing his junior year abroad, and that was as close to heaven as I can. So I don't know if it would be a wish to return. I would love to be able to return to New Zealand. That was just such an amazing country, and to have gone there and traveled around with my own son was pretty special too.
Yeah,
so.
I bet. Yeah, it's harder than people think to come up with a wish.
I know.
Think.
Yeah, it's funny.
Yep.
I hadn't thought of that.
We do an elimination game with our kids where we sort of have, and we're steering away from this of the category piece, but we have sort of categories of that. I wish to have or be somebody, or meet or go someplace, and then sort of work through eliminating it with them. And you can play it yourself and just kind of give some thought to, if you were given the opportunity to wish for anything, what would that be, and what would that mean to you, and how would that impact your life? And even thinking about it.
Yeah,
yes.
That would be a really interesting workshop.
Mm-hmm.
And all right, I have an entrepreneurial idea to have like a workshop that people pay to go to, but to go through that process. And it would be kind of like, visualization, because people who are professionals should be able to make their wish come true on their own. So
and I think
we'll have to talk about that,
yeah.
Kate. I think we could have like a personal wish making workshop.
I love it. I love it. Because what you also get from that is just going through the process. How does it make you feel just thinking about it? Right.
Right.
And so that's so much part of our journey again that I talk about with our kids is that just opening that door, just giving them some control back that they haven't had while they're battling their illness that's a key part of it too. So it just goes so much further than the actual wish. But
something to think something that could be possible that previously you might have thought was impossible.
Absolutely. That's absolutely correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll talk.
Yeah, we will. So how can people get in touch with you if they want to follow up?
Oh, great. Yes, I think you have my email, so they can email me for sure at kvickery@maine.wish.org. And then LinkedIn as well. Love to connect via LinkedIn, especially with, leaders in our community. If you're interested in board service or volunteering with us, or if your company is interested in getting involved with our mission. And like I said, we're still, for the safety of our kids, that's our number one priority. So travel is still on pause. And so the majority of the wishes we're granting right now are local, and there's opportunity for engagement and support. And we're always looking for in-kind, if there's services or products that will help support wishes that we can work with local partners on as well. So please feel free to reach out and we'll figure out how to get you engaged.
Well, yeah, to build that army of the engaged.
That's exactly right. Yes.
Well, Kate, this has been fantastic. I've really enjoyed chatting with you today, and I'm so glad we were able to have you on here.
Me as well. Thank you so much, Nancy. Appreciate it. It's been great to see you and spend some time as well.
Thank you. And have a great day, PR Maven Nation. Thanks for listening to this episode of the PR Maven podcast. I invite you to share a review of the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast player. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. You can also join the PR Maven Nation on Facebook. It's free to join, and it's a great community of like-minded individuals who are all looking to learn and grow from one another. If you use an Alexa device, use your Alexa app to search the skills and games section to find and enable the PR Maven podcast flash briefing. This will give you access to exclusive content and more PR and marketing advice. Thanks again for listening, and have a great rest of your week, PR Maven Nation.